You're listening to the Four Phase Cycle podcast with your hosts, Dr. Alex and Megan of Zesty Ginger. If you're looking to naturally balance hormones and learn how to work with your body instead of against it, you've definitely come to the right place. As a duo of an integrative MD and a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and best friends, we use the four phases of the female cycle in combination with functional lab work and mindset practices to transform the lives of the women we work with.
We also have a whole lot of fun along the way. If you're new around here, it's best to start with season 1 before jumping around and plan to roll up your sleeves. Showing up for ourselves and enjoying our lives is what good health is all about. Just a quick reminder though, this information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making changes. Hey there, welcome back to the Four Phase Cycle podcast. Megan here, and I just interviewed Vikki Fraker of Farm to Souls. Such an amazing conversation. Vikki and I got to talk about her history and the fact that she, for the first half of her life, was suffering from alcoholism, bulimia, perfectionism, self-rejection, and through many years of therapy, AA, and studying spiritual principles, her life has totally shifted to one from suffering to one of peace and deep purpose. And Vikki has been an incredible mentor for me. I've done her book studies and groups and have made it out to the farm because 10 years ago, the farm was created as a sanctuary for women who were needing to be reminded that what their soul is worth, that it has its worth, and reconnecting to that little girl within is one of the 12 spiritual principles that they use at the farm. And they've now taken this into an online format called Farm to Souls so that this could reach everyone, even during pandemic and times when we're not meeting, and all these people who really were wanting some help and on a deep level, just they all know they need to reconnect with that little girl within and their wholeness and live the life that they are created for. So Vikki and I had an amazing conversation. She's always been such a fabulous person for me to get some deep understanding at any time I'm struggling or suffering with something. And I just hope you get as much out of this as I do. The link to the guide they have on reconnecting to the little girl within, 7 tools to reclaim and come home to who you were created to be, will be in our show notes. Go check them out at Farm to Souls on Instagram or info@farmtosouls.com to connect with them. So I hope you enjoy this as much as I did. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Four Phase Cycle podcast. I have special guest Vikki here with me today. Hi, Vikki.
Hello, Megan.
So happy to have you with us. So Vikki has become a good friend of mine and a mentor, and I've been enjoying. Vikki and Amber have a company together, Farm to Souls. I've been really, really enjoying the coaching and book studies that they've been offering in the last year. So I've been dying to have Vikki on. We did an Instagram live a while ago on relationships and everybody loved that topic. So I said, please, Vikki, come share more. So thank you so much for being here, Vikki. I would love to start with just a little bit of your backstory. So I have heard you say you feel like you kind of have 2 halves to your life. Is it the morning and the afternoon?
Yes, the work of Carl Jung and Abraham Maslow, 2 halves of life, the morning and afternoon. And that was very much true with me. The morning of my life, I was very much on just an outward journey of a lot of addiction and pain and suffering and bulimia. I was an athlete and I just kept working for my worth. And the more I did, it was just never enough. And so that was the morning of my life. And then the afternoon of my life was and is and continues to be just this unfolding journey of coming home to the truth of who I was created to be. And so what I call it is the world's rhythm and God's rhythm, the internal journey and the external journey.
Amazing. And now you're living on a farm.
Yes.
And I would love to hear why you created the farm the way it is, the purpose of the farm to self and just the history there.
Yeah, so the farm was created primarily just to continue this journey of letting my heart love what it loves. It's easy for me to get swept away in the world and just become focused on what I do and what I have. And I needed a space to just unhinge from the world and find peace and refuge and retreat. And so my husband and I created this farm, and the purpose was to have a place where I could connect with animals, art, and nature. Those are the things that feed my soul that I've always loved to do. And then in turn, by filling up on what I loved, I just felt called to give other women a safe place to do the same. And so the farm was really created for that purpose, to get away from the external world. And we're way out in the middle of the woods, and we have tons of animals and waterfalls and creeks and streams. And it's just a place to get off the world's rhythm and get on God's rhythm, is what we call it.
What was the turning point for you, Vicky, when you kind of went from morning to afternoon, right? Where was it, a rock bottom with the addiction and bulimia and suffering? What was the point where you turned to the path that you're on now?
Well, what is interesting, I love, obviously I'm in recovery, and one of the things they say in AA is, if you're tired of hitting rock bottom, stop digging, because there was always a new low for me. It took me 20 years, almost 20 years to get sober. So I was in and out of rehab, and um, really struggled with just connecting with my heart and soul, and being who I was created to be. I always tried to be who other people needed me to be, who I thought the world needed me to be, in order to get attention and approval and validation. And so I would get a little bit of time sober, and then I would go back out, and I'd get a little bit more time sober, and I would go back out. And I just, through a lot of my healing work, I learned that I didn't have the competency or the container to hold the love and healing. I was more comfortable in suffering and pain. Even though it wasn't what I wanted, it was familiar. And so I always went back to that, what I called a set point of suffering.
And at one point, Vicky, I don't know if is bodybuilding or you were lifting or what's the correct word there, but you were competing.
Yeah. So I did a lot in the weightlifting industry, but I was on the National Olympic weightlifting team. So the sport was Olympic weightlifting. So I got to represent the USA in international competition. So what I looked like, my strength, winning medals for my country, that was where my identity and my worth totally came from. I had no connection of who I was beyond that. And so as time continued to unfold, and my life changed, my body changed, um, I thought my worth and my identity went with that. So I was lost, and I just kept trying to find myself in many different things. That never worked, because I kept looking outside for something that I've learned now can only be found inside.
Was not having the lifting in your life, was that a part of where you start to feel really, really lost or split from who you were?
Um, yeah, I think that was the major, if I look back, the major line that was drawn, because it's almost like I could hold it together for a long time, for 10 years of kind of piecemealing my life together to keep it going. And then when I actually retired from the sport, everything really came crumbling down. And the truth of the matter is, I'd already been in rehab 3 times, and this was going to be my fourth time in rehab. I ended up in a mental institution. It's where I met a woman who changed my life. It's where I finally got sober and things really, really started to change for me. And when I look at like what that change was, like when you talk about that line, it really was, she said to me, you may get sober and you may stay sober, but until you learn to connect with the deepest part of your heart and your spirit, you won't ever truly live and come to life. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to know how to live and wake up and come to life as it looked or appeared like everybody else was living, and I felt left out, you know.
And this is where the farm focus became so much on the internal. Was that the driving factor?
Yeah, so when I got out of treatment for the fourth time, of course, I relapsed again, and I really started struggling. And I realized that I was trying to fit a round peg in a square hole. Of I was still trying to be very much of the world. We lived in a subdivision. I grew up on a farm. I grew up running barefooted and playing in creeks and streams. And I realized that in order for me to do just the total shifting from the morning and afternoon, I had to go back to a lot of my beginnings, which is how I was raised, which was riding horses and taking care of animals and taking care of the land. And I just realized it was a necessity, you know, to get back to where my heart was calling me to.
Did you have a lot of resistance when you first got to the farm, or was it like a peaceful, oh, I'm here?
I think it was a little bit of both. I think we bought a place that was very run down and needed a lot of work. And at the time, I had rescued 8 horses, and so there was just the land needed work, the fencing, the house needed work. I still needed work on my healing journey because I believe, you know, you have to stay on that. And so there was peace in it, but very quickly, I'm was amazed and still amazed, Megan, how quickly I can get lost in the doing of all the responsibilities and duties, even out here. And so it's something I have to keep in check.
Now it's weed whacking.
Yes, it is weeding ditches and, you know, mucking stalls and all that stuff. And I've learned when I'm in balance. And what I mean by that is when I've inhaled as much as I've exhaled, I've taken in as much as I've given out or given away. When I'm in balance, it really is a sacred act to take care of this land and the animals and the people that come out. But when I'm out of balance, meaning that I've done too much doing and not enough being, I can start to resent even this peaceful, beautiful place, you
Mm,
know?
yeah. So I know, Vicki, that you and Amber have this fabulous guide about reconnecting to the little girl within. And we've talked a lot about this concept. So, 7 tools to reclaim and come home to who you were created to be. And I love, love, love this. So, I'd love to talk about just the idea of reconnecting to the little girl within and the inner child work, and start, if you could just explain to me, what was your first opening into this, or where did you realize how important this was for your journey?
Yeah, so another one of Carl Jung's quotes that I feel like is the foundation a lot of the afternoon of my life is built on is that in order for a person to change, they have to change who they believe they are. And so the first part of my life, who I believed I was just in my body, what I had, what I did, what other people thought of me. I didn't realize that who I was this beautiful, wild spirit and essence that needed nurturing and needed to come forth. And so when I came back from the last time I was in rehab, I'll refer to a woman named Pat. It's someone I continue to work with today. And when she offered to me about really coming to life and living, she said, the way you've been in relationship with yourself has to change. And I didn't understand what that meant. How I'm in relationship. Like I didn't understand that. And later I learned what she was talking about is how my mind continually is going. If there are not breaks in my continual thinking, and if I don't learn to be in a kind, gentle, compassionate relationship with myself, then how I'm in relationship with myself, how my mind and heart are in relationship, is how I'm going to be in relationship with others. And I didn't understand that because I thought that I could be critical, judgmental, and harsh with myself and be real kind and sweet to everybody else. And she just kept explaining it doesn't work that way. Until you can come home to a compassionate relationship with yourself, the external may change, but the same patterns are going to continue, just the faces will change. And so at first, she offered the inner child work, the little girl work. Man, I grew up in the South on a farm. I was just like, little child work, like, it's just a bunch of shit. Like, I don't have time for that. And so, of course, it took me, a couple more years of suffering and of trying to find another way. Because I really thought, Megan, that I could just keep kicking my ass and that eventually I would shape up. And she would just come back and say, yeah, that way is not going to work. But until you realize that, you're never going to get this compassionate journey. And so I suffered a little bit more. But the whole reason that I now share and that Amber and I together now share this work of connecting with our little girl, the sole purpose of that is to learn how to be in a kind and compassionate relationship with ourselves. And so the adult Vikki did not know how to offer the adult Vikki compassion. It was too big of a leap for me. I could say the words, but there was no healing and movement and healing because I couldn't access it. And so that's when she said, I think you're ready now to start integrating the little girl. And even still, I was like, ooh. So when people first come to me and they're like, yeah, that's a little out there for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I get it. It was way out there for me too. I get it. But if you would like an offering or another way, I can give you some tools that were so generously given to me of connecting with that little girl.
That was really helpful for me when you shared one time, Vikki. I had somebody in my life who we were helping, our family was helping, and seemed to keep, she was making decisions that weren't, in our opinion, in his best interest. And you said, sometimes people just need a little more suffering. Ooh, okay.
And that's the hard part because when we see suffering, we want to rush in and stop the suffering. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. But then we also need to remember we all have our own free will. And just like me, it took me 20 years of suffering until I was really ready to make life changing decisions. So who knows where one suffering ends and another ends, you know?
Yeah, there probably is no path to speeding that up for you or someone else. It's just where they fall, right?
Yeah, and then what I would say to that is I just don't believe, I'm deeply spiritual, Megan, so I just don't believe a single tear is wasted. I believe to the degree that I suffered is to the degree I'm going to be able to have compassion for other people. So when people come out to the farm and they struggle and they can't get sober or they're addicted to suffering and they just keep doing the same thing over and over, I can meet them right there and say, wow, I've been there. I totally understand where you are. And when you're ready for another way, there is another way. And so you let people have their own journey in whatever way that they need.
It's beautiful. I've been to the farm and it's such an amazing space. So Looking forward to your someday retreats out there.
Soon, very soon.
Let's talk about reconnecting to that little girl within, and just some of the, in your handout there are 7 steps, but I'd love to just talk about the first 2 steps. The very first one being openness.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can tell when the little girl work was first offered to me, I wasn't open. And so it took me a few more years of suffering. And so one of the things I would say is just to be open. I believe our mind and heart is hinged to the same door. And so as our mind is open, our heart remains open, and that's where incredible healing and shift can happen. The Buddhists call it beginner's mind. To stay low and to stay humble and to stay open until we get to that place. The same mind that we come to our life with will just keep being the same mind we move forward with, and we'll just keep getting the same thing. And so there's always an openness. If light's going to get in, there has to be some openness.
So just even open to the idea, starting to allow just little cracks in of, I was similar in fighting, I'll use the word fighting, many different recommendations of like journaling. I'm like, ugh, journaling. Meditation, ugh, all these things that I now rely on completely, right? I use all the time. So I understand that resistance to a lot of different topics like this. So
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was sorry. I was just going to say that's where the suffering that you were talking about, someone in your family, like that's where we have to get to the end of our suffering until we really are humbled and say, okay, I've come to the end of myself, and everything I've gotten has got me to here. I am open for some guidance and some wisdom. And so it's a beautiful thing when we get to that place. But nobody can take us there. We have to allow ourselves to be open.
Well, I think that's the greatest lesson I've gotten recently, Vikki, is that the line I'm keep repeating in my head is, this is a choice. So this is a choice, Megan. I was in a situation where I was, we'll call it suffering. And then I was getting some insights on the suffering. And then I was choosing more suffering, and then getting some insights and, feeling a little better temporarily, but then kind of continually pulling it back in. And one of my mentors said, Megan, just want to let you know, this is a choice.
Yeah.
Just really, it became so clear, like it opened my mind of me pulling this back in, right? I might not be ready. And also knowing this is a choice to stay in this place.
Yeah, it's powerful. It usually is the basics that open us up, that we come back to. What I would say to that is, and again, I'm probably projecting a little bit, is from my past, when I realized that I was the common denominator and I was making a choice, I would beat myself up for not getting it sooner, or judging myself that I can't believe I'm here again, which just binds me to whatever I'm judging. There's no freedom in that. There's no healing in that. And so now when I have this awakening, like I love that, like, oh my God, like I am subconsciously choosing this and I can choose again. So now it's just like, oh, sweetheart, you're free. You have a choice. You just forgot. Let's make another choice. And that's where that open and compassion inner child work can come in handy, because that's what we would say to a little girl who is 6, 7, or 8. Oh, sweetheart, you have a choice. You just kept going to the monkey bars, but you wanted to go to the spin around thing. It's like, oh, honey, choose again. You've got a choice. And so if we're not in relationship with the adult version of ourselves like that, for me, I can go back to judgment and nothing. I just go deeper into judgment.
It does seem like in the beginning of opening up to a path like this and really discovering your thoughts and your feelings and interaction with others, it seems to me it starts usually blaming others, right? If those people in my life would just do the things I need them to do, I would be fine. And then I think that often there's awareness around that. Like maybe someone's gotten into Byron Katie and they're questioning, is that true? And they're starting to realize other people. And then what you just said, Vikki, then they jump often to, or I did, to then, okay, it's not anybody else. It's always me. And then the blame, it's kind of like supposedly one level up, but then you're just blaming yourself for everything and not doing it fast enough and not knowing and not using your tools.
Yeah, that blame is just a conditioned choice a lot of times. And the more we blame anything, then we will start increasing our momentum to blame. And again, there is no light, there is no love, there is no healing in blame. There's only stuckness. And so we have to open up with there's got to be another way. There's got to be another way.
So, speaking of the inner child and the little girl, what is the next step? What do you ask people to do or suggest people to do to start to get in touch with that part of them?
Yeah, so the second step is connect. And again, this is just an offering. Like I never think that I have anybody else's way. This worked for me and it was profound, so I share it. What people do with it is totally, up to them, of course. I always like to say that. But Pat, my mentor, suggested um, get a picture of your little girl. And you can imagine how I just rejected that. I thought I judged it and all of that. But eventually, I went to the place. I can't find a picture. I don't know where pictures are. And she just always said, okay, okay. There was never any harshness. It was like, oh, okay, well, if you really are open to this work, I bet the exact picture you need, you'll find. And so, luckily, I of course found it. But it's to get a picture of your little girl, and she suggested to set it by your lamp next to your bed. And so, when you're dozing off to sleep and you go to turn off your lamp, you just look into her eyes. That's it. You just look into her eyes. And then hopefully you go off into 6 or 7 or 8 hours of subconscious sleep where you just have a visual of that little girl. And then when you wake up in the morning and you're still groggy and you turn on your lamp before your monkey mind has gotten wide open, you just glance at her leaning up against your lamp and you just look at her. You don't have to do anything. And there is power that something starts happening internally. It may take you 2 months to actually really look at her. You may just glance and keep moving, and that's okay. But when you really start seeing her, when you really start locking your heart with her heart throughout the day, when you get ready to judge or be critical or harsh with yourself, that little image of that beautiful little soul will flash across your mind and your heart. And when you get ready to start going on this critical tirade, you will look at her and over time, for me, you will be able to give yourself and give that little girl what she most needs when life gets hard or even when life's good.
So are you thinking on a day to day of what would I have wanted to have been told in this situation as the little girl, or what was I learning from then that I just didn't understand, like I was seeing from a different perspective?
Yeah, I think it's all of that. I think again, everybody's journey is different. So for me, it really took a long time for me to even just acknowledge her. Like I think I had rejected myself so much and my life. I had abandoned all parts of myself that I deemed unlovable. And that's the parts that she is inside of each of us. So for me, it took a long time just to acknowledge. And that it was a couple of years, Megan, like before I could even really acknowledge. And I was also in therapy and doing a lot of healing modalities during this time too. Um, and eventually, yes, I learned a lot of things along the way. But one of the things I learned is when I'm longing for something, my first step was to go outward and see if people could give me that. And this journey teaches when we're longing for something, if we go inward first and give it to ourselves, who we become energetically changes. And then how we show up to ask the other if they can meet our needs is very different. And so one is filled with expectations of what I need you to give me. And the other one comes from a more fulfilled place of, I have the tools to give this to myself, and I also need this from you. And so I learned one was just a healthier way to be in relationship with other people because I was in a healthier relationship with myself.
So knowing that you maybe still want some love or someone to tell you you're worth
Yes.
amazing, and that you still have that tool.
Yes. So what the problem was is I was at such a I had such a void. I had such a lack of love and connection and validation and all of those things as a little girl. So I grew up as an adult um, at a deficit, needing those things. And so I would go to others. Do you see me? Do you love me? Who do you need me to be? It was this constant, almost like longing and begging for people to see me and value me and encourage me. And when they did, I felt loved. But when they didn't, I didn't feel loved. So my power lied in how other people could give me what I needed. And those became very unhealthy relationships. And so when I learned how to see and acknowledge and validate the internal me, the little girl in me, the essence of who I am, of course I still need others. Of course I still need all those things from other people. But when they can't give it to me, I know someone who can. And that's the difference.
And that's the difference in like the codependency piece versus
Yes. 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 That
community
is.
or relationships.
Yes, yes. So I was in CODA for about 10 years, which is a 12-step program for codependency, because I did not know how to be in healthy relationships. And I did not realize that it started with me. And how I saw me was how I saw God and everyone else. And that was just a perfect example of what I just gave you of how I was in relationship with other people. And it wasn't fulfilling relationships. It was me working for my worth, and it was other people owning my worth. It wasn't me owning my worth.
And then you've shared and in the coaching, you're always saying, right, anything we're seeing outside of us is just mirroring something back to us about ourselves, right?
If we're open and we want to see that, that may not be someone else's truth, but one of our we have 12 spiritual principles at the farm, and one of them is from AA, and it's you spot it, you got it. And that's not in a harsh way, but in the spiritual world, a lot of saints and sages who have come before us have been very clear that what is inside of us is what we see in our external world, as within, so without. That if we want a different external life, we have to be willing to make some internal shifts, because that's where it all starts. So that goes back to that little girl that you were just saying. So if I see, like, I need some support. I need some validation. Of course, I use that as an opportunity to go inward and to connect with that little girl and to give her support and validation. Now, it doesn't mean that I then don't need that from my husband or other people. Of course I do. But if I'm seeing that I'm not getting that externally, it's an opportunity to first go internally and be generous with giving that to myself, and then go externally and ask for it from others.
Absolutely. Vikki, at this point, I know you've read millions of books and you're a study. I mean, I am too. I constantly love to learn. Do you have a standard, or do you have a ritual or a process, like when something comes up in your life, like something triggering or something happens? Do you kind of have like a process that you work through? Is it different every time? What are your go-tos for like supporting the little girl or questioning or
Yeah, I mean, Byron Katie's had a huge influence on my life. As the two main influences on my life have been Wayne Dyer and Eckhart Tolle. And and one that I use all the time is Eckhart Tolle says one deep conscious breath is a meditation. And so I'm a pretty intense person. And so when I start ramping up and my energy starts ramping up and I start going, I can almost see myself spiraling off of my center. So sometimes through breathing techniques, the breath has been one of the greatest gifts that I've come home to, is to understand that is my life force. And that's where God, as I understand God, moves through me. And if I need help, if I need guidance, if I need to slow down, one deep conscious breath can move me in that direction. And so my breathing is a huge part of it. Another healing thing that Pat and I've done for a long time is CBT and DBT, cognitive behavior therapy and dialectical behavior therapy. So thoughts, feelings, actions, being aware of what I think is going to determine what I feel, and what I feel is going to determine how I act. And then the component of mindfulness with DBT has just been huge, because I'm throwing these out there just like, oh, there's this. And I know you have 10,000 things as well. But if they just remain a doing in my mind, there can't be a shift in my being, in my energy. It's just one more thing to check off the list. And so I have to be very mindful that I'm not going just to checking off the list, that I'm actually reaching for these things because I need a shift in my being.
Mm, yes, I know the list. The list, I used to do the gratitude list, but it was a checklist item. And it was very different than when I was doing the gratitude, like actually feeling the gratitude. I was like, oh, this is a different situation of that versus people say if you write down things you're grateful for at night, you'll be happier.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, we just want to live our life from a place of deep purpose and meaning. And so sometimes we forget, and we even gather, when I say we, I mean me, spiritual tools, and start checking that shit off the list so I can live on purpose and intentionally with deep purpose and meaning. It's like, oh my God, I am doing these things. I forgot to integrate them and live from them. And it's okay. It's okay. One deep conscious breath gets us back into where we can shift that and start over.
So I also believe, Vikki, right? Everything in my life that's been a huge challenge or a struggle has always led to something even more amazing. I have that belief. And I'm curious, like, I know a good amount of people who really fight up against this idea that you have to suffer throughout life to then learn or to grow. Like there's always going to be another level of suffering to then grow more. Do you feel like that is kind of like, is that your belief that there's always has to be suffering in order to grow, or what, how do you look at that?
Um, well, I don't believe, like, I would not use the words always. Like, again, those are extremes. That's more addiction, always, never, those words, even though I do use them. Um, I think for me, I did have to suffer a great deal for me to have my ego understood. I don't believe healing and awakening comes only through suffering. I don't. I think suffering can be a set point that we become comfortable with. And again, we think that that suffering is required to burn off our ego. I don't think it's required. I know for me, the majority of my healing has come in great suffering, but it's not a set point that I now live my life from.
So it's you, things got better, and then now there will be, what happens for you now, like a smaller blip in the radar, and don't go down, 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 but you're like, oh, now I'm learning something from that.
You know what? I think one of our spiritual tools is allowing, not interfering with life, with God, with ourselves, and that can be very vague and like, what does that mean? But a tool that I've learned from Eckhart Tolle is it's around resistance. And so I had a natural posture and stance with my body and with my heart to resist whatever came towards me, life, people, situations, because everything is always changing. And change to me as a little girl meant that I was unstable and unsafe. And so I would cling and lock down to certainty. And through a lot of this work, I have learned the art of allowing. And so, whether it's little suffering or great suffering, whether it's little joy or great joy, it's allowing whatever comes to move through me and to be fully present in the process rather than trying to manipulate and control and line up life and people and outcomes the way I think they should be. And so it's not that the suffering has changed, it's the way that I approach difficulties has changed. That there is a surrendering um, that happens now that I didn't have access to in my morning of my life, I would say.
And reconnecting to that little girl has helped you have a different perspective.
Well, it changed everything. It changed everything because I couldn't access compassion. I couldn't. All I knew was my ego was fighting my ego. I didn't know how to be gentle and surrender and let the walls around my heart come down. And she gave that to me. She gave me pieces back to myself that I had left in my past because I thought those parts were unlovable. And she let me see, oh, sweetheart, all parts of you are lovable. And I'm going to actually help you remember and integrate those parts so you can remember the wholeness of who you were created to be in the first place.
That's beautiful. I love it, Vikki. Thank you. So the everyone can go check out we'll put the link in the show notes, and then or you can head on over to at Farm to Souls on Instagram, where Vikki and Amber have this guide where there's 7 tools to go a little bit deeper with reconnecting to that little girl within. I love, love, love the idea of just digging into this area a bit deeper. I haven't even gotten my photo, Vicky. Now I'm realizing.
Wow. If you feel led, I would really like to encourage you and to maybe share it with your audience or your community. It's so cool to see when women start um, taking pictures with themselves, holding their picture up, or it's just like, oh my God, it's just this community of these like-minded little girls and these women just running free. It's a beautiful thing.
What age did you go for?
Um, I always say, whatever age you're supposed to find, you'll find. Some are early, 4 or 5. Mine was 8. I would say, it's before puberty.
Hmm.
That's when our ego and our fear and our inadequacies we start really clinging to. So I would say before puberty, there's usually some wild freedom in us still left before the world gets a hold of us, you know. But if you're open and you ask the creator, the universe, the guides, the angels, whoever, whatever picture, it's so cool to see how you'll find it.
I'm gonna go look right after this. This is great. Amazing, Vicky. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up? We'll be putting your Instagram handle in the show notes and the link to the guide. Anything else you want to share?
Yes, there is. I just want to thank Amber. If it wasn't for Amber, Amber's the other part of Farm to Souls. And I was comfortable staying locked into the woods in my little cabin in my little barn in the woods. And Amber came alongside and just said, the world and women need to hear this. And I was very resistant. I wasn't open. And she just believes in the power of this work. She believes in the power of community and the healing of women. And it's because of her that I'm here, that I've met you and all of that. So even though she's not here today, I just always want to acknowledge and just send Amber and just a whole big full heart of gratitude and love.
Amazing. Yes. So Amber has been instrumental in bringing that message of the farm that you're doing in real life, right, in person to the virtual space. As this last year of the pandemic, there was no in person. So women need this. I was in two of your groups throughout the time, and it was amazing to just have that community and the coaching, the real time, like this is what I'm dealing with. We did the 2 books. So a way to, what was it? A way to love?
The way to love.
The way to love. And then yamas and niyamas. So just both completely eye-opening, life-changing, fabulous. So excited for your next group, whatever it may be. I will be staying tuned, and I hope everybody joins me. So go check them out on Farm to Souls, and then that way you will know what's coming up.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Megan. I really appreciate you. You're such an inspiration to Amber and I and so many other women, and just keep shining bright. And I just want to say thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Vicki. Thanks for coming out to hang with us on the podcast. It is our goal to transform the way women are treated in healthcare. And we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. We have a lofty goal of 1 million downloads. And we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more women, get more amazing speakers for you, and bring the most cutting edge information.
If you found these podclasses helpful, please take a moment to text 5 women you know the link to the series. We appreciate your help so much. Can't wait to see you next time.